What I didn't know was, how the hell am I going to go from this cell at Wasco State Prison on D Yard to the Olympics? Because at that time, there were very few stories that had that. In fact, there were no public stories. You have to search very deep on the internet to find any outside of my own story where somebody's went from prison and participated in the Olympics.
Welcome to Recovery Cast, the podcast where we share authentic stories from influential voices about the joys of life in mental health and addiction recovery, and the journeys that led us here. I'm Brittany Baynard, and today we're honored to welcome Tony Hoffman, a pro BMX rider turned motivational speaker, coach, and recovery champion. After battling addiction, incarceration, and mental health challenges, Tony rebuilt his life from the ground up. Today, he travels the U.S. sharing his journey from prison to coaching at the Olympics with honesty, humility, and hope. As the founder of PH Wellness and the Free Will Project, he equips individuals and communities with the tools and courage to face addiction, stigma, and trauma head on. Tony's story reminds us that redemption isn't only possible, it can spark purpose. Hello, everyone. Today we are welcomed by Tony Hoffman. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tony is a former BMX pro athlete, Olympic coach, nationally recognized speaker, recovery advocate, and nonprofit founder. Super honored to have you with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for allowing me to be here. I'm always grateful for an opportunity to share my story and my experiences.
We're going to dive in, but before we do, what is something that you would like people to gain from your story?
I've been to some pretty low places, and I've been able to bounce back from that and get to some pretty high places. But none of that really matters, right? For me, it's a balance. The most important thing I think that we can achieve in life is just feeling balanced. Like we know where we are is exactly where we're supposed to be, but you have to do work to get there. And hopefully through my story, you realize that there's a work that needs to be done to achieve that type of balance, to achieve peace or serenity, as we would say in the program. And so I think there's so many parts of my story that can guide people in that direction and kind of reinforce that we got work to do to get there, but you can get there. And that's a great place to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think balance is something that I've learned to appreciate just hearing you speak and learning about you. You have kind of shifted the way you think, but also provide that balance from the other side, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
You found a lot of success as a BMX star. Can you kind of tell us about that and when that all started for you?
Yeah. So I actually accidentally found a BMX bike. It wasn't like that was something I thought.
You happened upon it?
Well, I got kicked out of school in 7th grade. Mm-hmm. So my trouble started in middle school. I mean, a little bit before middle school, but middle school hit, I really struggled with my mental health, started making some impulsive decisions. And I got kicked out of school for selling a girl weed. My first dream, and still my favorite sport, is basketball.
Oh, nice.
And so I thought my life would be tied up into basketball through my early adult years. But I got kicked out of school, so that removed me from school sports. And at the time, my brother was racing BMX. And so my dad and my mom said I needed to go out to the track with my brother. And so that's what I started doing. And I kind of did it just, in proxy. If my brother was doing it, why don't I do it? My dad was a former professional motocross racer, so racing kind of ran in our blood.
Yeah.
So when I picked up a bike, it was kind of like, carpenters produce carpenters, and my dad being a racer produced racers. Me and my brother both picked up the idea of how to race really easily. And before I knew it, I was one of the best in the country. By the time I was a senior in high school, on the cover of the BMX Racing magazine, was ranked number 1 in the country in points going into the final race. And I didn't even go. Wow. So I had a lot of early success and some signs that you should probably stay on this thing and see where it goes. But a lot of my troubles really started to reach a boiling point by the time I was 18, and there was a lot of social pressures going on, and you're trying to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life. And
so you've got this natural talent, but you're like, I'm dealing with stuff internally. And
if you get around enough pro athletes, you'll meet enough of them that'll tell you they don't do it because they love it.
Yeah.
They do it because they're good at it and they don't know anything else to do. And that was a dynamic for me, right? I was exceptionally good at sports, not because I asked to be, just because I was. Yeah. And I grew up in a town where sports was everything. We produced a lot of league players. We produced a lot of Division I athletes and Olympians. And so I just did what we did in the school districts and found out that I was just a little bit different. and you don't really think as a kid, right? You're trying to just be a kid and have fun. And so me getting involved in sports, it wasn't so much because I loved it as much as I was just good at it.
Yeah.
And so I never saw myself racing BMX professionally and that being how I was going to fund my life and my future. So a lot of the stuff really reached a boiling point my senior year because I started bailing on the things I probably should have stayed with till I started really finding my footing on who I was and what I was going to do with my future.
You're right. Talent is great, but you're a kid and you just want to be a kid. That's what we want to be good at, you're seeing everyone else having fun and everyone else having, a kid's life.
Yes.
And so what was that like? A little bit more into that. Is that really, you saw this pull to, your talent pulling you in this direction, but you're looking at, there
was first a conflict or war within myself and what I was experiencing from others around me, starting with like my coaches early in my childhood. I remember my 6th grade basketball coach being very frustrated with me because of me not reaching the potential or working towards the potential that he saw with my talent. And he was just like, don't you want to be a champion? And my answer was no. I want to be normal.
Yeah.
I want you to leave me alone. Because what I was doing was looking at other kids having so much fun, right? There was no pressure.
Right.
There was no, expectation of what they were supposed to be. They got to show up to practice and the coach didn't say anything to them. And I was being put in this leadership role that I didn't feel for myself. I didn't feel like I was a leader. I didn't want to tell people what to do. I loved the sport and loved playing it, but there was just a conflict between what others were telling me I was supposed to be, who I felt I was, and then just really what I wanted from that entire experience.
It's interesting because you're talking about basketball, which is a team sport. You've got, at least on the court, 4 other people, and you were probably feeling completely alone and isolated.
Yeah.
And all you want to do is connect.
Yeah. And that experience started to multiply when I got into my junior high years and I emotionally started to feel more. There's things we learn about the human brain and the development of the human and, kind of emotions and how when we become young teenagers, things start to really come at us, right? You start to understand your environment. You start to understand mom and dad.
Kind of like an awakening of some sort. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you start to have these feelings about these types of things. And my father was a workaholic. And this was a big breakthrough I had in my therapy session, probably about 8 years into therapy, which was kind of how I came to know my origin story of where this all started and how it really became what it was about to become. My father was a workaholic and he wasn't around much. He was always at work. Well, basketball was my dream. And I really started to feel this disconnection of self, expectations of others, and looking at everyone else and their experience in the world and what I believed it was like for them.
Yeah.
When my father was absent from these games after he would tell me that he would promise me that he was going to show up to these games, it left me feeling more isolated, more alone, but more heavily confused.
Yeah.
Right. It was like, why am I having to experience this? Because I don't think other kids are experiencing this. We were district champions that year and recognized up and down the state of California for how good we were at playing basketball, this team. And I went to the district championship awards myself. I walked there. I was the only kid that didn't have a parent there. My parents were both at work. And what I tell people is it felt like I was in a boxing ring, right? 12 years old. I'm in a boxing ring and I'm getting the shit kicked out of me. The bell ring and I'm supposed to get a 1-minute break or whatever it is, right? And I sit down in a chair and I look across and I see my opponent has an entire team.
Yeah.
Ice in their face, giving them water. And I look around and I don't got anybody with me.
No one's in your corner.
And the biggest problem for me was I don't want to fight. And I'm getting the shit kicked out of me. I don't even want to fight. Like, why am I having to do this? So then I become more confused because it's like, why am I engaged in this fight? And why am I getting the shit kicked out of me? Because I just want to have fun. I just want to feel balance. I just want to feel this peace within myself. And that was really when I started to get really disconnected from the world, right? Because then I started to believe if my dad didn't love me and my dad didn't care, there really was no reason for me to care. And that was when I really started to see a massive shift in my behavior in a classroom. And I didn't care about what the teachers had to say. I didn't care about what the coaches had to say, because who are you to tell me what to do if my father and mother are absent and not even there to tell me what to do or care about me in my mind.
Yeah. And then adults are like, that's the bad kid. And you're like, instead of being like, why is that kid acting differently than they were prior?
Sure.
And I feel like these adults in your life that were like, why don't you do this? They saw this potential in you clearly, like you are a leader. Like they saw this thing in you, but I feel like they weren't looking that step further. It's like, why is he holding back right now? Yeah. Why is he letting something hold him back? Yeah.
And I've had, me and my 6th grade basketball coach were great friends now. I tell him I love him all the time. And I went to an NBA finals game and I sent him pictures and we talk, and he asked me one time, he's like, what do you think I could have done different?
Wow.
And I've had a few of those moments, right? I've had a lot of people tell me I couldn't do what I'm doing right now, right? But I've also had a lot of people look back, apologize and say, well, what was it that I needed to do different? And, I told Ford, I don't know that there was anything you could have done. We grew up in a time where we didn't understand mental health. We didn't understand early childhood trauma or the ACEs type stuff, but I think what could have been done is understanding why my behavior was the way it was and find a way to give me a leadership role that met me where I was at and not the expectations of what a leader is supposed to be. I was just a kid. Yep. Right. Find a different way to engage me as a leader. And that's something we do at my treatment center is we try to find ways to engage guests as leaders to help spark some type of belief in themselves. But that's not, I didn't have that in 7th grade. And it really was when I just decided I'm a lone wolf and it's me against the world.
In 7th grade.
7th grade. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. Wow.
So 7th grade is prior to kind of like you taking off with BMX and so even that happened at such a young age too, like all this recognition, all this like skill and opportunity happening at such a young age. How are you handling that?
The BMX thing was a little bit better, right? Because I was dependent on myself. Right. The action sports thing really worked out good for me because if I believe I'm a lone wolf, then I don't want anybody else involved. I'm my own coach. I race my own race and the results all depend on me. I feel like in the team environment, when I was at this state of mind, as I was when I talk about 7th grade, the idea of having to lead others made me feel worse about myself because I didn't believe I was capable of doing that. And I didn't want that responsibility. So when I switched over to team or individual sports, I kind of thrived in that, right? I got my own sponsors. I was my own person. I tell people in my book, basketball, skateboarding, and BMX are very similar in that each one of those respective sports, athletes show up as individuals and how they represent themselves through fashion. Skateboarders were very individualized through their expression of fashion, right? When we were kids, it was the big baggy jeans and the skate shoes,
jeans,
right? And the hair, right?
Yeah.
And I loved the individualism of those type of things. And so I feel like I thrived in that environment. And that's why when I got to the Reformation period of my life, when I was in prison, when I started to soul search, there were areas of my life that I found served me well. Yeah. And I wanted to keep those and enhance those pieces of who I was. And the individualized version of myself, I felt like there was a lot of power that I held, not to control people, but my presence and this confidence in who I was and what I represented when I was sponsored by Fox, sponsored by Spy, and I was doing my own thing and I was engaging in what I was gifted at. And I felt like, okay, these are the things I need to hold on to. So the pressure there, I don't think it was really causing any problems. Yeah. Because it was all on me. Yeah. The next level of pressure came when there was the societal expectation of what we're supposed to do when we graduate high school. And that was really when I crumbled because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to go to college. I suck in a classroom.
And you were also you were doing something that isn't part of that narrative. The next step.
Oh, sure. Especially at this time.
Yeah.
Right. We're at the beginning of, pardon anybody that's educated, we're in the beginning of conning everybody into college loans. And that if you go to college, you're going to get out of college and make $150,000 to $200,000 a year. So all my friends are going to college and they're going to make a bunch of money. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't even know what I want to do. I mean, I had an idea of what I wanted to do, which was to be a network administrator. But at the same time, everybody was supposedly going one direction. And again, I'm taking the lone wolf direction. And there's a lot of scrutiny that comes with that as an adult from families. And I'm from a small town, so they expect you to become a cop, an attorney, a doctor, or a firefighter, these things that are
anything
secure.
Outside of that's just kind of like, huh?
Yeah, what do you do?
Yeah.
It's like when people say in the dating years, I've had moms say, they pay you to speak? Tom and I know, you kind of chuckle at it, right? You're like, yeah, lady, I actually get paid to speak. You know, I don't have to be a nurse for 12 hours to make money, you know? So, yeah. So 18 is like really when the societal pressure hit, and that felt worse than the pressure I was feeling as the expectation of being a leader in the team environment for sports.
I find this very interesting because like I had this perspective as like a young girl and like what my brain did to me. And I have a daughter and I have this, like, I always try and be super conscious of like, this is the age I was at when I was really struggling. Like this is where my mind was at. So try and be really conscious of the things that she's going through. But I experienced that as a girl and I can help her through that as a girl. But I never had that experience as a young boy, and to hear that, like, I know that everybody struggles, but to hear somebody, a man say like, as a young boy, like I felt this way. It's just, I find it really interesting that you guys also had those like just internalized thoughts about yourself.
Sure. And I think the mentors around you teach you how to process those moments. And
if you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky, right? Otherwise you have to teach yourself.
Right.
And that's why I tell people sleep was the first drug I ever took. Was because the first medication for my misery was sleep. And I had to teach myself that because mom and dad were workaholics. So if you don't have anybody there, whether it's through unintentional absence, like my family, or you actually grow up in an environment where the chaos has created them to be absent for many types of reasons, you have to teach yourself, which is dangerous because a kid's decisions until the frontal lobe is developed and they're adults, almost like 60% of your decisions are based on how you feel. Nothing else. Which means you're going to only try to secure yourself emotionally and not even know that those decisions you're making are for that because your brain's not developed enough yet to know it.
Trying to protect yourself in those moments. Yeah. So, so jumping back to 18. So this is when people are leaving, choosing their things. Also didn't go to college. It was a weird time because you're just like, what am I doing? But I feel like I'm okay. I'm still young, right? Like I have time. Where did that lead you?
So I took a job opportunity down in San Diego to be a network administrator. My aunt knew this guy that was Entrepreneur of the Year of California. What I was doing, I had social anxiety, so I really spent a lot of time to myself. I learned how to build corporate computer networks on my own. I self-taught, read a lot of books on my own, and had a friend that mentored me as well. And I was offered an opportunity to be a network administrator for this guy that was starting a wireless internet company in 2002. So when I knew that I was going to get this job, it was right before I was going to graduate. And so I decided I'm not going to race BMX. I'm going to make a lot of money. That's the most important thing. That's why I was never crowned, if you want to call it that, national age group #1, which is a NAG ranking for BMX, which would have been everybody in the 19 to 27 expert age group. I was ranked #1 going into the final race. I just didn't even go. That's how much I just didn't even care. Put the bike away. I'm going to go make money. Problem is I have this limbo period between graduating high school and moving down to San Diego. And my tribe is at the BMX races. I don't really have a huge tribe at the school.
Sure.
When I gave up my tribe, my gift, my connection to an empowering group of people, I basically had myself, which was a self-destructive place to be because I struggled with suicidal ideation. My anxiety was through the roof. I was depressed and becoming addicted to sleep. I had everything laid out that this wasn't going to go the right way because I didn't have any type of conversation. I didn't have any vulnerable spaces.
Person.
Everything was laid out for this to go the wrong direction. And so I started going to parties because that's what every other senior was doing.
Sure.
You got the time. You did the thing.
I got the time in my mind. It's like when somebody goes to treatment and they're constantly breaking the rules and doing all of the things that they shouldn't be doing, telling themselves, I'm never going to come back. I'm not going to relapse. I don't need to pay attention to this stuff, right? In my mind, I'm going to go make 6 figures and everything's going to be okay. So I'm just going to go to parties and do what everybody else is doing until the time being, not recognizing that the actual problem was my thinking and the behavior that I was about to engage in. I could tell myself I'm going down to make 6 figures, but everything was laid down as a foundation to say, this dude's going to self-destruct and it's not going to take very long.
Yeah. The actions weren't leading up to 6 figures. Yeah.
It didn't. It went from smoking weed to using OxyContin to home invasion robbery within like a blink of an eye. 3 years. But that's like a blink of an eye, right? Like from 18 using your first OxyContin, 21 committing a home invasion robbery for OxyContin. So it went from cover of the magazine, graduating high school, 6-figure opportunity to he's now holding guns and going in a house. to rob people for their prescription medication, it's a pretty big fast fall from grace.
When I used to go into schools early on in my speaking career, I used to ask teachers, like, how are you talking to students that are riding a skateboard over a railing? How are you talking to them about risk? Because I think you're thinking two different things. And so here you're a BMX nationally ranked athlete, and the leap to robbery and the things you're doing, to most people, like, wow, that's a big leap. But on a risk, in your mind, is probably risk wise.
I've never actually thought about that, but when you did that, there's a very strong connection.
Yeah.
You stand on top of 40-foot starting hill for a Olympic BMX race. My heart is equally as pounding driving in a car knowing I'm about to go in a house armed with a gun.
Exactly.
You obviously, you're looking at, okay, prison time, but you're also thinking about, if I make a mistake, people have left in helicopters on these BMX tracks, right? So the impulse risk, adrenaline rush is a very similar type of experience. So yeah, you're probably right. It's not much different when it comes to
both produce reward that you're looking for at that time.
Sure. And the interesting thing for me was the reason that OxyContin became so powerful in my life, the way I explain it is, sleep was the first drug I ever took because it stopped the suicidal thoughts, it stopped anxiety, and was removed the weight of depression. OxyContin was like sleep, but I could be awake. So I got addicted to sleep because as long as I was asleep, I didn't have to feel. There was relief in sleep. Problem is, when I woke up, missed opportunities, missed responsibilities, which came with more disruption emotionally. If I took OxyContin, I could achieve the same effect as sleep, but I could be a part of life. And for those of us, when we engage in a substance that becomes an addiction, in the beginning, it was fine. I could go into the world, I could smile, I'd show up to my engagements, I was getting out of bed easier, and I felt like I had finally achieved what I believed everybody else had freely, right? That was balance. They loved themselves, they loved others, they got to be happy. OxyContin was the first time I felt like, okay, I can actually be a part of life. Then there was the confusion of, why can't I just get the doctors to prescribe me this? Because when I started sitting down with doctors, 18, 19 years old, and this is back when everybody was bipolar, in 5 minutes, they tell me I'm bipolar. I need to take these tranquilizers and mood stabilizers that made me feel like my soul was gone. It was very confusing because if I took OxyContin, it felt like my soul was renewed. Like everything about what was wrong with me was instantly
felt
fixed.
more alive in those.
And so when I started doing it, it was simply because this is how I end up feeling like everybody else gets to feel, not knowing that I don't get to choose and decide how you feel or what your experience is, Tom. We all have our own unique experiences, and nobody's life is perfect.
I love how you go back to balance again. As you said, you sleep, but then you wake up and you've got a whole new set of negative emotions, of missed opportunities, regret, guilt, and things like that. You're unbalanced.
Yeah.
Now you found something that brings balance back in, although it's
a trick.
Yeah. It's a trick.
It's like the big book says, it's an effect.
Yeah.
Right. We became addicted to the effect. And the problem is, as soon as the effect wears off, it offers us more discomfort.
Yeah.
Through missed opportunities, failed execution of responsibilities, more anxiety, more shame, more guilt. And the only way we know how to remove that as a skill is to take more of what brings us the effect.
It masks, your true behavior, what you're to everyone else. Like if you were in bed the whole time, it's easier for somebody to say, something's going on here. Whether, I don't know if people did or not, but if you're walking around doing stuff, although they don't know you're on OxyContin, so they less opportunity for people to really jump in and help.
Absolutely. But at the same time, we're talking about early 2000s, people depressed was like a get up, quit being lazy.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Nothing to be sad about.
And I still hear this today. Sometimes it makes me cringe. It's like, a teenager that says they want to kill themselves is just looking for attention.
Oh, wow. I know.
Well, I hate to break it to you. A healthy teenager doesn't use suicide as a way to get attention.
Right.
They have a whole list of other things that they'll do. That should alone tell you that they're having a conflict within themselves versus the reality and world that they're viewing through their eyes. And that we need to figure out how to support them.
Yeah.
Right. How do you help them make sense of their world? Because that's really what it is. Let me help you make sense. I don't want to tell you what your world is, but let me help you make sense and find that balance within yourself so you don't feel the emotional disruption to the degree that you do because you've learned how to talk yourself out of going there because somebody else has offered you a reality and landscape to think about. Some tools.
Yeah.
So if anyone did see you sleeping too much, you got that response. You're lazy. They're not really understanding.
They started bailing on me. My friends started bailing on me, leaving me behind, and some of that's self-induced, right? I don't blame them for some of it.
Sure.
If I was going to sleep, I was going to sleep, and they're not going to stop their life for me. But at the same time, I think we know enough now that a healthy group of kids would, have conversations with, "Are you okay?" Because I get them in my DMs from kids. They're very smart today when it comes to the emotional awareness of, how do I have this conversation with a friend? I'm really worried about my friend who's doing X, Y, and Z. Where I don't believe that was ever a conversation to the most degree. I think I had one friend at one point who was worried about me, but mostly because I was selling drugs. And to the degree that I was selling drugs to a community of kids that were upper middle class, and the drugs I was selling them was starting to destroy their life. Oh. His conversation was more or less, "Do you see what you're doing to all of our friends?" And I didn't care at that point because I'm a lone wolf and it's me against the world. Yeah. Don't tell me what I need to do. So I wasn't very receptive. Obviously, I remember it because it was a deep conversation, but
also, that would make me feel like, other than like me selling and them buying, what's the difference? I'm doing the same stuff.
Right.
I'm doing the same thing.
Yep.
You can just see the physical sale of it happening. And that's why they are the way they are. And
he was actively using ecstasy all the time. Yeah. And you know what I mean? So it was like,
but I guess what
pot meat kettle.
What people don't really see is it's not you're selling this, you're doing this. It's like what they're not seeing is you're just trying to survive.
Sure.
You're just trying to keep your head above water.
Yeah.
And at that point you're desperate to do that.
Yeah. And I meet that statement with a grain of salt or a gray area, right? Because that is the truth. But at the same time, I was breaking the law.
Yeah.
I was hurting people's lives. And I made some very poor decisions that not only affected myself, affected others. And there's consequences for that. But meeting me where I was at was, why is Tony really doing this? Mm-hmm. Is Tony a bad person who wants to hurt people? No, because if you got around people that were buying drugs off me, they'll tell you that I never tried to do anybody wrong. Yeah. I never sold them something that was fake. I always made sure that I took care of people because in my heart, that's who I was. What I truly was doing was trying to escape from the misery that I felt. I was a life sentence. Mm-hmm. I felt like I had a life sentence in misery. Selling drugs was a way to keep the supply of the drugs I needed to stop the misery rolling. Yeah. And that was what I just found. I couldn't work at, the grocery store. I couldn't work these jobs because I just felt so discontent in that environment.
Sure. Well, we know what's coming. Let's get you to prison.
Yeah.
Let's get you to prison.
Let's get you to prison. We know that's coming. So we know what you're feeling at the time. We know what you're doing at the time. But now you're in prison. I don't know if you want to talk about how you got there, but is that your rock bottom or we're trying to get to that?
Homeless is the rock bottom. Homeless is before prison, 6 months stint. I have this story about a couple months before I was arrested. And there were many moments where people started to slowly separate themselves from me, right? The phones stopped getting answered. The doors stopped opening for me to come in. The conversations of, "Hey, you need to leave," started flowing.
Was this with family as well as friends?
Everybody. Yeah, everybody. I started using needles, so I was reckless. I'm 22 years old, and I was a speedball guy. So it wasn't for me one thing. It had to be an upper and a lower. So it was heroin and meth, heroin and cocaine, always. And that was a reckless thing for upper middle class kids to see. Even when I was going into the projects, gang members would watch me use and they didn't want me around. Yo, you got to get this guy out of here because we don't want to have to deal with his body when he overdoses, right? So there's this moment before I get arrested where there was a couple of my childhood friends left that were the last ones in my life. There was a couple of gang members, Bulldog gang members. If you know anything about Fresno, California, they've had their own gangland show. Fresno Bulldogs are a very notorious Hispanic gang in the United States, but Fresno specifically. And a couple other people that I had met along the way. I'm about to do my speedball thing. And this Bulldog gang member looks at me and he says, are you really going to do all that?
Whoa.
And I just looked up at him and I said, yeah, bro, don't trip. I was like, if I die, you can just throw me in that dumpster outside these apartments.
Oh,
You seriously just said
That's
that?
quote. That's a quote.
Okay.
I was like, if I die, you can just throw me in the dumpster out there. And that was when you could feel everybody's energy. Like, yo, why is this guy here? Because I'm in a different place, right? Like at this point, I'll do anything to stop myself from feeling what I feel. And the level of hatred for myself is just, I know I'm going to die. And if I do, just put me in the dumpster, but don't stop me from doing what I need to do to keep myself from feeling what I'm telling you and you're hearing. So I do this and we get ready to leave. We start walking out of the apartment. And in my mind, I'm going to my buddy Nathan's truck with Henry. And everybody's walking out and they start speeding. Some of them are like jogging. And everybody gets to their car and I'm just walking, trying to process everything. They get in their cars, they back out and they just drove off. And I'm like, well, I know they saw me. Like, they left me here. Mm-hmm. And that was it. Like I started to realize, I don't have anybody left. They left me. Walked the street the entire night, confused.
Yeah.
But high on meth, super high on meth. So talking to myself. And that was like the first night, like I was like really starting to have conversations about who I've become. I couldn't talk the way you hear me talk.
Yeah.
Stuttering and not being able to put thoughts together. And I just remember telling myself, like, you fried your brain, you fucking piece of shit. Like, what have you done? And I'm like in the middle of nowhere in Fresno around the airport, just walking around 2 a.m. And it shattered me. You know, there's nobody to call. I don't have anybody that's going to come and save me. There's no place I can go to warm my feet, take a shower. Physically isolated. Yeah, every bit of isolation and confused.
And you've had support structures your entire life.
Yeah.
Until they're 100% gone.
Sure. And I burned them all. My parents tried to help me.
Yep.
Jenny's parents tried to help me. Jeff's parents tried to help me. Tony's parents tried to help me. Like I've got names of homes that were like, Tony, come stay with us. You can start over here. We know your family's not helping you anymore, but you can start. The Shins family tried to help me multiple times, right? So when I tell you that people have given up on me, it's not because they didn't want to help me. It's because they couldn't. Because as soon as you open the doors, I sold drugs out of your house. Because as soon as you opened the doors and I promised you I'd get a job, I slept till 5 p.m. And it was like, I couldn't see that I was the problem. I couldn't see that I needed to wake up to my behaviors, to my thinking, and I needed to make these big changes. And mostly because at the time I felt like it was unfair. Why do I have to do this? Why am I the one that's supposed to be the champion? Why am I the one that has to get sober? Why is everybody else not having to make these changes in their life? Which was the biggest fallacy ever because most of them are dead now.
Wow.
That's a crazy thing because like when I started walking the street, a lot of these names that I'm like, why didn't they have to get sober? Why didn't they have to get sober? They're dead. 16 people I went to school with have died since I've graduated high school. They just didn't get there as fast as I did. Right? Theirs was a slower process. Nate, my best friend that I thought I was getting in that truck, he died 17 years ago in his bedroom. I couldn't see that everybody else was on the same trajectory.
Yeah.
I was just the big risk taker. When I got in a car, I went as fast as it could go. So of course, my personality drove this thing to the edge, to rock bottom at a much quicker pace, which is why I'm so grateful I'm alive because of all the people.
Oh, that's really interesting.
They were going to get there too.
You were going 150.
I was going on 150.
Yeah. Wow.
And, you know, you ask some of my friends that have gotten sober, it took them longer to get sober because in the beginning, they would just say, well, I'm not as bad as Hoff.
This podcast is brought to you by Recovery.com. It's a place where anyone can find mental health or addiction treatment options specific to them. You can filter by location, price, insurance coverage, therapy type, mental health condition, levels of care, and so much more. Recovery.com is the best place to find mental health or addiction treatment for anyone, anywhere.
They were using me as a metric.
The gauge.
I was the metric of who's really got a problem.
We love those metrics. I mean,
There's
so many rooms I went into early on. Yeah. I could always, like, in my own family, we always could point to my brother Chris and say, we're not that bad.
Yeah.
We all were. Like, drinking wise, yeah, we were. But Chris let us, say, okay, we got some room to go.
So the homeless stint was my rock bottom. Prison was the first step up because it was a place of stability and consistency, which is what I needed, a structured environment. So one of the sobriety pillars at my treatment center is structure. And the reason for that is because a structured environment helps a person thrive and find who they are in that process. So when I got to prison, people tell me, man, was that the worst thing ever that happened to you? No, because I had 3 meals that came at the same time every day. The lights turned on at the same time and they went off at the same time. Yard opened at the same time. Yard closed at the same time. That gave me an environment that was so structured, I could then begin the process of developing who I was going to become, how I was going to become that person and make those changes. So it actually became the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because like everyone was like, oh, prison's rock bottom. And I knew the answer to that question was like, no, it's not.
Sometimes by the time you get there, it's already.
Yeah, it might be for some people, and that's great.
That's fine.
If it is, that's great.
How long did it take you once you got to prison to realize this? When you said, oh, like, I got all these things,
first week.
Maybe, that's, wow.
You got a lot of time.
It started to happen. Because so when I went in, I was on lockdown for 90 days. And lockdown, for anybody that doesn't know, was 23 and a half hours a day. The cell only opened for 30 minutes. And that was to take a shower. And if you really get accustomed to cell living, you actually don't like to leave to take a shower. You actually just bird bath inside your cell because you get comfortable with this little confined space. But I read this quote in the ceiling, which is a big part of my speeches. And when I got to my cell, I made my bed, jumped on my bunk, and I was like laying down. I had nothing else to do but look up in the ceiling. And I started reading this quote somebody written with a pencil. It said, be careful what you think because your thoughts become your words. Be careful what you say because your words become your actions. Be careful what you do because your actions become your habits. Be careful what you make a habit because your habits become your character and your character becomes your destiny. And I just kept reading it. Yeah. And I think this was the first time I ever read something as a student in life, right? Because I knew everything. If you told me something, I know, I got it. I was broken. Homeless. I don't got it. I don't know anything. I had a spiritual awakening January 21st, 2007, day before I was arrested. So when I get to prison and I read this quote, I'm reading it as a student. And I started to realize that I had been in prison for 23 years of my life.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And I have this analogy that I tell people. If you truly work a program of recovery, you start in a room in the first years of recovery. And that first room is when the veil gets lifted, right? When you realize that you are the problem and how you see things is the problem and how you do things is the problem. When the veil gets lifted, the concrete room turns into a glass and there's a door and you go over to the door and you realize, I don't have to be in this room, but there's no key. So you're trying to figure out how to get out of this room because what you see on the other side of this glass is a much more appealing place.
Sure.
Then you learn that the key is actually in your mind and that it's how you think. And until you've learned to think a certain way, which is to navigate the challenges that you've been given right there in that very moment, every single one of us have character defects. We have to think our way out of these character defects. We do the work to the degree that our thinking begins to change and who we are begins to change. And then instantly the door pops. And you go into this next room and you feel a new level of peace that you've never felt before. And you're like, wow, this is really cool. And you kind of walk around and you're examining the room and it's super cool and you like it. And then you find another door. And you're like, oh, this isn't the only door. Well, if the way I got out of this room was to work on my thinking, my response, and my behavior, well, then I think I'm going to keep refining that process. And then the door opens again. And what I tell people is I believe that I have gone into 3 different rooms, and I'm currently in a 3rd room with 18 years of sobriety. The level of peace that I feel today in my life is something that I can't explain. The level of love I have for people is something I cannot explain. I don't want anything bad to happen to you. I don't want anything bad to happen to you or anybody in this room. I want each and every one of you to be successful and define life, whatever that looks like for you. I don't want to get in the way of that. But if I can support that and be a piece of that, I want you to take that from me, take the insight that I have, take the tools that I have, because what was given to me is something that I should be giving to you. Because when you get into these rooms that are deeper levels of consciousness, what you feel is so rewarding. It's far greater than any drug or substance could ever give you, right? But when I got to prison, when I was in that cell, the veil was lifted. And I think that was why I started to realize, okay, I'm not supposed to be here, but I have to work my way out of here. And my relationship with God that I have now is actually going to call me to these places. He's going to call me to being better. He's going to call me to loving more. He's going to call me to helping more. And if I just follow him, he'll do everything with people, places, and things around me. The right person will show up at the right time. The right mentor will say the right things. I'll be listening to the radio at the right time and hear the things that God wants me to hear that are going to help me refine who I am. That started when I was in Wasco State Prison. I decided, you know what? These are the things that I am. I'm an athlete. I'm not a student. I think I got time to get back on my bike. I need a platform. I think God wants to take me to the Olympics. I need to start a nonprofit organization that uses my gift to help people give back what I was given that I didn't ask for, which was the Free Will Project. And I wanted to become a professional speaker. I really wanted to tell people about what I had gone through in my life and make sure that people like young Jameson didn't go through the same things that I went through just by simply telling them my story. What I didn't know was, how the hell am I going to go from this cell at Wasco State Prison on D Yard to the Olympics? Because at that time, there were very few stories that had that. In fact, there were no public stories. You have to search very deep on the internet to find any outside of my own story where somebody's went from prison and participated in the Olympics.
That's amazing.
What I read in a really big book called the Bible, that was my path, was that if you could be trusted with little, you could be trusted with much.
I've gone into prisons and talked to recovery groups, and there's some amazing work being done now, thankfully. But this was a long time ago. Like, what did you find? Like, how did you do that? Like, I love how, like, this lone wolf all of a sudden is thinking differently.
Yep.
But are you still a lone wolf? Did you find?
And I still fight that, right? Because I have social anxiety.
Yeah.
And my fiance laughs about it. She's just like, God, you can get in front of so many people to speak. And then we go to a restaurant and you like tense up. You know, being in a public environment around a lot of people I don't know, it just makes me anxious and I just like doing my own thing. But I knew that I needed answers and I didn't have the answers on my own. And then my spiritual experience leads me to the Word of God through the Bible. Well, that's a really confusing book. That makes a lot of words. Yeah. There's a lot of words that make no sense. And I'm like, trying to figure this out. And divine circumstances. Every place that I went to after I left Wasco State Prison was exactly where I was supposed to be, that met me where I was at and fed me the food that I was able to digest. So when I went from Wasco State Prison, I went to Tehachapi, and my neighbor George was a very spiritual person. So I confided in him. He didn't understand the Bible to the degree I needed to do, but he understood prayer and spirituality and kind of a relationship with God. And his neighbor invited me to the church services at Tehachapi, which actually engaged me more into like the spiritual realm. And I hate to say religion, but a relationship with God. And then when I was transferred to Avenel State Prison is when I found the person who would become my mentor, the person who would disciple me. His name was Toby Wade. He was the one that was very versed in the Bible. He was the one that showed up for me every single day and taught me how to be disciplined and held me accountable. Yeah. Because I'd never been in that position with the new state of mind, right? Hungry and willing to do whatever it takes. I now needed somebody to show me what that looked like. Yeah. And so he would pull me off my bunk. He would say, let's go, let's study. He would say when we were done, he would say, okay, read this out. He would say we were going to study this. And so through his example and his leadership, he was able to depart to me the tools that I was going to need to go into the world and accomplish a lot of these goals. And it wasn't easy. And it's taken a lot of work, a lot of work. Like when I say we study for like 6 hours a day. Dang. And he's a black dude. I'm a white dude. In California prisons, you're not even supposed to be sitting down with.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Wow. That's a big no-no. And I'm sitting down, you can feel, all the white boys judging me because I was sitting down with the black dude that, if they've got their skewed view of things, but I didn't care. And Toby and I are best friends still. Jameson just got to meet Toby. We went to one of the finals games. That's like our thing. He got out of 21 years and we go to watch a basketball game every year, and that's my treat to him. And I didn't do it alone. And I looked for that help. Yeah. Right. Because God tells me that, where two or more are gathered in his name, that he's amongst you. And so I knew I couldn't do all of it alone.
Yeah. And it also sounds like you've completely reframed like accountability to yourself, because prior it was with that lone wolf vision of like, I got to do this. It's on me. I'm doing this. But now accountability to yourself seems like it meant something completely different.
Yes.
Not just for you, but for like something that's greater and beyond yourself.
Yes. Now I'm going to make a strong connection with that point. There is a story right now of a young man named Chance Marsteller. He was in treatment and he saw my TED Talk. He was a Division I wrestler, like on the verge of being one of the best in the world, and lost everything to his addiction. His counselor shows my TED Talk, and instantly there's this, if that guy can do it, I can do it.
Yes.
She reaches out to me. We actually get on the phone and he tells me, I'm going to do the same thing you did. And of course I'm like, yeah, bro, I love it. Let's go. Let's roll. He now has a documentary. He's been sober, I want to say over 5 years.
Oh, it's amazing.
Has podiumed at the Pan American Games for wrestling, almost made the Summer Olympics for wrestling. The person who's writing his book reached out to me and he says, when all of this was happening, like, what's going on in your mind? And I said, do you realize that Chance may not even be where he's at today if I didn't do what I've done? Because it was my story that made the connection for him. I said, I want you to think about this. There was a very specific moment at Avenel State Prison when I was doing wind sprints. And I thought to myself, and God, I have to do this. Because it was like 110 degrees out. And people are like, what are you doing, dude? It's too hot. I had to do this because my story is going to be what God uses to save somebody else's life. Ooh. If I don't do this, I'm going to be accountable for that. So, and not in a shaming way, like, oh my God, I'm going to go to hell. But at this point, I'm ready to be a leader. At this point, I'm ready to harness all the potential that God gave me, all the talent that God gave me. And so I felt like, yeah, send who? Send me. I'll go. And so it was like I was out there doing the work because I was going to be accountable for whether or not Chance was going to find sobriety, because God was going to use my story to connect with this young man 15 years later. But I was having this understanding when I was in prison that this is going to save somebody's life. You have to do this. Don't give up, because God is going to use you to save somebody else's life. And that other person's life is more important than your own. And so there was a level of accountability that I was feeling, which a lot of people may not want, but I gladly accepted that my life and my decisions weren't the only thing that mattered. There were other people's experiences and my decisions affected other people.
Yeah. Wow. When you went to prison, were you sober at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How did you get sober?
They locked the cell for 90 days and didn't open it, but for 30 minutes was a good start. That gave me 90 days. That's why I always tell people, you're not going to come to treatment in 30 days and feel it. You're going to get an idea of it, but you really got to go to aftercare. You got to go to continued treatment through IOP, OP, sober living, so you can experience real sobriety. Like you can experience your mind mending itself and the drugs and the emotions settling in. And I got that forced in the first 90 days. So then when I went to Tehachapi State Prison and I would see some drugs, I was actually offered heroin from a guy named Tommy, who was a guy from Fresno. 'Cause if somebody gets drugs and they're from your home area, they have to share it with other people from your home area. Me and him were the only people from Fresno on this yard. So he came up to me and said, yo, I got some stuff. I'm going to cut you in on it. I said, no, I'm good. I had just enough time for me to know I'm done. I don't want to do this again. Go ahead and enjoy it. I could say, go ahead and enjoy it. When I got to Avenel, everybody was shooting dope in their necks, left of me, right of me, front of me, behind me. Toby was my saving grace there, was I had a community. And I think the most important thing, though, in the beginning is community. I run a group because I love working with our guests. That's my thing. I'm not a hire fire guy like Matt Pazza, my business partner, is. I let him do that stuff. I run groups and work with the guests, you know. I talk about beliefs and perspectives because that's a big part of my understanding of life. And I tell them, I say, if you want what I have, all you have to do is learn how to think the way I do, right? It goes back to those rooms. If you want what I have, all you have to do is learn how to think the way I think, because that will turn into who you are. And that will produce a product no matter what. But you cannot have what I have if you don't get in proximity of me. You have to be within an arm's distance. You have to call me. You have to text me. You have to show up at the meetings I'm at. You have to listen to what I'm saying. And as you get around me and you listen and you hear me and I give you suggestions, I'm retooling the way you think to the way I do so you can become who I am in your own person to get the results that I get. Whatever that looks like. Right. If you want to be a big business person, you got to get around people that have big business ideas and know big business. If you want to be 18 years sober, you got to get around people with 18 years sober.
Yeah.
Because their thinking has allowed them to be 18 years sober. In the beginning, you may not have a big purpose like I did, right? I understand that the grandiose goals that I made early in sobriety are not for everybody. But everybody needs a community to get wherever they see themselves or where they want to be. And that's what helped me. Toby was the beginning of my community. When I got out of prison, I had my BMX racing community and my family and my support system and my church. They helped keep me safe.
Being in the rooms and healing with other people. It also taught me the greatest tool that I've ever used, learned rigorous honesty. So I think that's what you're talking about
100%.
And when you tell people, it's not just think the way I do. Part of that is start by being honest with ourselves. So what was the first time you were honest with yourself?
I didn't own a cell phone for 13 months when I got out of prison.
Oh, wow.
Because the honesty with self part was really starting to take effect. So our sobriety model, my sobriety model, is a foundation of spirituality and self-affirmation. The first pillar is willingness, which is the hardest one because I can't teach you willingness. The second one is honesty, which is the hardest pillar because it's twofold: honesty with self and honesty with others. That's the culmination of rigorous honesty. I knew that if I had a phone, I might call the wrong people. I might text the wrong person. And to me, that was a temptation I didn't want to put myself through. So I denied myself a phone for 13 months when I got out of prison. Rigorous honesty, understanding the intention behind why I'm doing what I'm doing. I use this extreme example for people that are in recovery, especially early recovery and males. If you go into the dating world and you do not sit down with a female and tell her that you're in recovery, you're in a very slippery slope, because that one tells me that you're either still ashamed of who you are or you don't want her to know, which is dishonesty. And shame, if that's the reason you're not doing it and you don't tell her, you're adding behavioral debt and weight to the shame. You're giving that shame life by hiding it because you're afraid of it, which means you put more shame on your back. 2, if you do not tell this person the intentions behind why you're sitting at the table with them, you may be putting yourself at risk. Because if all you're looking to do is sleep with this person and you don't tell this person that, you know that you're using them. And by using them, there's a guilt mechanism. So the honesty, the rigorous honesty, when you really start to peel it back from a psychological level, is in our everyday decisions. Why am I doing what I'm doing right now? Am I truly trying to do the best for somebody else, or am I using them? Because whether or not you feel and can identify guilt, shame, or these other products that come with these type of decisions, they exist after you make the decision. And for many of us, that's why we drink and use. Rigorous honesty is the key to freedom. Because rigorous honesty removes the weight of shame, removes the weight of guilt and disappointment and all of these things that carry the weight that make us feel more discomforted. And that's why I say in the beginning, peace and balance comes from work. You get up every day and you do the right thing. You get up every day, and even though it's a hard thing to do, you do it because over time, it starts to remove the weight, starts to remove the guilt.
One of my favorite sayings that I heard early on that, again, kind of put me in that mindset was, actions before results.
Slowing down.
That's like when people start telling me God's will and they're like in their first 6 months of sobriety. I'm like, yo, slow down. That's a very complex topic. We can say it, but let's not get overwhelmed by it. Where are we right now? And what are the results we're getting right now?
Yeah.
Because those results are communicating where we're at and what needs to be done. This whole like God's will and things that disconnect you from future and past and allow you to live today and knowing that where you're at, those are very, very complex topics that take years to get into. Who am I right now?
Yeah.
What are the results that I'm getting? The results do not mean that's who you are and you will always be. It just means that this is what needs to be changed.
Yes.
If you don't like parts of the results today, these are the things that we're working on.
Right.
That's all that matters.
Yes.
And you do that one day at a time.
Yes.
The rest will take care of itself.
The way you're speaking about it, I feel like just applies to people's lives in general. You don't have to struggle with addiction just to realize, like, take a step back and evaluate why you're doing the things that you're doing, the purpose behind it. You've been sober now for 18 years.
Yes.
It's incredible. Congratulations.
Yes.
And in that time, I'd imagine that recovery looks very different. And from the beginning, from 5 years to 10 to 15 to today, talk a little bit about that progression, what it was like in the beginning, what it's like now, and then maybe about like the relationships too. Like, what were your relationships like prior as compared to now, and how has that progressed through your recovery?
So to start, I would say the first 8 years were the selfish years of my recovery.
Oh, really?
It was very about myself.
Yeah.
Very protective of myself, maybe to the legalistic side. Maybe too protective, very narrow-minded thinking, not in a bad way, right? When we get sober, we know that we have to be selfish in our early years of recovery. Still working a program, but kind of learning what that looks like over time. And then I would say somewhere around 10 to now, I've been working on the selfless years of my recovery, right? It's not about me at all. It's not about my story. It's not about the things I've done. It's about helping others see and understand individuals like us.
We love to go be of service and help others. But if you're not,
and there was a part of that, right? Because I had my nonprofit. I had my speaking. There was parts of me giving. It wasn't, my path in the beginning wasn't in the rooms.
Right.
I wasn't called into the rooms to sponsor folks and do it that way, right? So my giving in 12th step looked like a little bit different, but it was very selfish in my achievement and how I was going to achieve those goals. Very narrow-minded. This is what I have to do because God has called me to this. And it was, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. Where now the pressure has been released of, it's very selfless now. How can I be of service?
That's a great change.
How can I do things differently and focusing more on the care of others versus like, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. My relationships are totally different. The people I call typically when they answer the phone, what's up, Pop? How you doing? Do you need anything? And that's a big difference for me is just asking how you are. We get off the phone. We say we love each other. I sit down at the table with people that don't talk bad about others when they leave the table. And we don't talk about others when we're at the table. We lift each other up. We talk about ideas and how we can help more people and the things that we can do with the gifts that we have. And that's, I think, part of me getting into that third room.
Yeah.
Because you don't get into that third room without similar thinking.
Right.
So once you get to that level of thinking, you recognize the different layers of thinking other people have. And so it's not that I'm better than anybody. It's just we become more protective over the energy and the thoughts that we have. So we guard through boundaries those who come into our circle, right? Because we always welcome somebody in that made it into the room.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because we know, we're like, oh, come sit down with us. We're glad you're here. You made it to where we're at. Let's go.
So what are habits that you've created for yourself in your recovery journey?
Yeah. So I have been relentless in making my bed, organizing my stuff, and brushing my teeth every single day. If you follow me on social media, every day I will post a picture, just like I did this morning of my bed here in Madison, Wisconsin. It'll say 1, 2, 3, make your bed, brush your teeth, and organize your stuff. It was how I learned how to rebuild my life starting in prison. And it's something that I hold dear to me today.
Yes.
Is learning how to take care of the little things. Jameson yesterday saw me throw a paper towel and it missed the trash at the airport. And I went down, picked it up and put it in there. And he's like, "You're a good man," like joking with me. He's like, "I would have left it there." And I said, That would have sucked for the person that doesn't get paid enough money to have to pick up after me because I was too lazy to get it. And those little things are what matter the most to me. Putting a shopping cart back in the shopping cart rack. Like when I was in the airport or the airplane toilet yesterday, there was a lady that was behind me. The guy in front of me was an absolute mess. I cleaned up the bathroom for her and made sure the toilet was clean, because the last thing I need her to think is that I'm the slob that did that and don't care about her coming in and doing those. So it's little things. Those are the habits that have really allowed me to become who I am. It's just taking care of the little things.
I want to know 3 myths that you told yourself before you got sober that kept you from trying.
1, that my dad didn't love me. Number 2, that nothing would ever work out my way, that it was never going to be possible for me. And number 3, that I was alone.
And through recovery, you have learned that
a conversation could have changed my life because my dad does love me.
Yeah.
I never even gave the guy an opportunity to tell me his perspective. I decided on my own. I learned in recovery that work and patience will get me to luck. Right? Successful people aren't lucky. They're just the last man standing. And that is something that I've learned. I just need to do the work according to the results today and fall in love with that process. And that over time, I would find myself being lucky. And that is just where things are happening more for me than they are against me, because I've done enough work to become the person who can achieve the things that I actually want. I was very impatient before recovery. Recovery has taught me to just focus on today, and tomorrow will take care of itself. I have this thing that I learned from this guy, Charlie, a social media influencer. I'm already there. Time just hasn't caught up yet.
Oof, yeah.
How about that?
Yeah. And the third one, when I speak about my stuff, somebody else tells me, dude, same.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, wow, I guess I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And that connection is something that I always had wanted. I didn't know how to do it in the beginning. And now I know where my tribe is anywhere in the world. Really, I can find my tribe of people where I can walk into a room and we all know each other.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Your recovery journey has led you to this place now where you are paying it forward in amazing ways. Talk to us about what you're doing in the recovery community.
Yeah. So I have PH Wellness now, which is a drug and alcohol treatment facility. We're located in Southern California. We have 4 locations, working on an out-of-state location. We're stabilization, detox, and residential treatment with a strong spin of fitness built into it.
That's awesome.
As myself and my business partners are fitness guys.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
It makes sense,
Checks
right?
out.
Sure.
Checks
We should
out.
introduce you guys to fitness.
I like that.
I'm still doing the speaking thing.
Yeah.
Starting a family with my fiance, stepson, and, kind of building that life out for myself, and really just now focusing and enjoying more on the process of giving back more intimately through PH to people that are just like myself. And that's been fun. Dialing back speaking, I've been doing this, Tom knows, I've been doing a long time, 16 years on the road. 250 days, mostly of that 16 years. So dialing that back and really just trying to create a new balance for my life through family and intimate work through PH.
That's awesome.
But the nonprofit is no longer, around just because it was that chapter closed. I think been thinking more about writing more books, trying to give people that introspect that I love giving.
Please do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like there might be another door to another room.
Oh yeah, there is. And I'm excited for that because
I love that analogy, by the way.
Yeah.
It's a piece that surpasses understanding.
I'd like to say I'm going to steal it, but I'm just going to keep it from.
Yeah. We're going to have to not air this episode. I'm just kidding. If there's somebody out there still struggling, still trying to find maybe the next step, what is a piece of advice you'd like to give them?
Well, you won't know what the next step is unless you ask for help. And the person you ask for help doesn't need to know everything, but I promise you somebody knows what the next step is. Until we become willing to take suggestions, our problems will continue to exist. So just ask for help. Don't be ashamed of needing help. If there's anything, you should not want to not ask for help, because the next step is a new beginning and you're worth a new beginning. And so I just say, you got to ask for help and take that next step. And for the first time, if you're anything like me, just trust that if they're sober people like myself, they're going to take you to a better place, which means whatever they tell you, go do it, knowing that they can be trusted, even if you don't feel like you can trust them. Because that was a thing for me. I was a lone wolf because if I can't trust my dad, how could I trust anybody else?
Mm-hmm.
Until I learned to trust other people and their guidance to me, things would continue to exist because I'd always be in control. So give up that control. Let somebody else have it and tell you what to do and take those suggestions.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tony, this has been absolutely amazing. I am so grateful for this wisdom and for you sharing your story with us. Yeah. Tell everybody where they can find you. What are all your socials?
I'm on social media a lot these days. Tony M. Hoffman on Instagram mostly. Don't really play around with TikTok anymore. It just didn't work out the way I liked it. So Instagram's the best place. I answer all my DMs.
Oh, nice. I
have a social media person that runs my posts, but that's me in the comments and that's me in the direct messages. And I try to get back to everybody. So reach out if you guys need guidance or some advice. If you're a family member, always there to give you guys some insight, introspect, or help if I can be there for you guys. If you're interested in speaking engagements, you can find me, TonyHoffmanSpeaking.com, and you can check out our treatment center, phwellness.com.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, Tony, thank you so much for joining us. Yep. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.